Hi, Caleb from Brownells here, and in today's video we're going to be putting together a Glock 17. So this is one that we had to do for another project, so I figured why not just turn on the camera and let's just do it together. Alright, so let's just jump right into it, and I'll just kind of go through the parts as we get there. Alright, so I'm just going to open up our frame here, and this is the SCT-17, and this one, of course, is in flat dark earth. And before I throw this packaging, I'll just grab our slide lock spring out of there. And I'll place that neatly over there. And just kind of get our other small components that we're going to be using out. That includes our trigger. So this is a frame completion kit, so it's going to have more than what we need. But that's okay. I'll just pull all this stuff open here. Magazine catch. Slide catch. And then the Timney trigger. Alright. So this has a bunch of parts in it as well, and then our actual slide assembly. So the slide comes pre-assembled just like this. You can get them stripped, but this is a Brownells kit that we sell. And if you notice, this one does come with a ported barrel. We're not going to be using that either, and I'll explain why when we get there. So what we're going to need to do, I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the recoil spring and the barrel, because this Timney trigger comes with striker springs and things like that, so we're going to be doing a little bit of replacing. Alright, so let me just grab some tools to work with here. Also, with this one, I'm going to be swapping out this sights. It's just standard polymer sights that it comes with. We're going to be swapping them out for Suppressor-Height sights, because we are going to put a Trijicon RMR on here as well. Okay, so to kind of refresh my memory of what parts I'm going to need and not need, I'll just grab this Timney trigger, and I don't think I need anything else in there. And if you haven't done one of these before, I would highly recommend reading the instructions, because they do not go in like a standard Glock trigger. Alright. Got this stuff here. Perfect. And then you have two springs that come with it. One's a little lighter than the other. The one you use depends on what you're using your firearm for. I'm going to go with the one that's actually a little bit heavier. And I think the red one, yeah, the red one, and then the non-finished one, the red one's a little bit lighter. Okay, so you're going to need your trigger housing, which is what this part back here is. And on this particular setup, the trigger actually goes inside, or the trigger, what's the word I'm looking for here, the trigger component. I don't know the nomenclature of this piece, because like I said, it's vastly different than standard Glock stuff. So let me orient it here. Alright, perfect. And then we will just go ahead and knock out the slide real quick so that we can get to everything we need to do in the frame. Pull that back plate off. Alright. And pull out ejector, or excuse me, extractor rod. Extractor itself, the safety plunger. Alright, so we're going to set the safety plunger that was in there aside. We're going to use the replacement here and the spring that came with the Timney. We'll place those back into the slide. Held in by the extractor. And I'm not being super detailed right now as far as my explanation of what exactly I'm doing. We have Glock build videos that go into super detail about every little piece. So if you've never built one before, check those videos out. I'm just kind of breezing through everything I'm doing here for the sake of this video. Alright, and we'll insert this extractor rod back in here with the spring. And then we need, where is it? The striker. So we'll take our striker cups off of here. Take those spring cups, set them aside. Take this spring, set that aside. We're not going to use that spring, and we're not going to use the striker. We're going to use the new striker and the new spring. And put our spring cups back on. And you just slide those under the spring, relieve tension, and that's back on. Put it back into the slide. Put our base plate back on. Alright, and that's all we really need to do on the slide as far as the Timney kit is concerned. We'll need to do some other stuff to that, but we'll get to that later. And I'm actually going to go ahead, take this spring out of this bag, put these old springs back in. I'm going to put all my extra pieces in here. Alright, so this piece is a little interesting. So the way this is going to sit in, if you notice, the curvature of this housing kind of matches the curvature of the back of the trigger housing, and it'll sit in just like so. Alright, but what we need to do is make notice here. What holds this in is going to be this screw on the bottom and this plate right here. Alright, so what we're going to do is this screw on the bottom is accessible through this little window here. We're just going to unscrew that as far as we can. Just like so. And you want to make sure when you do that, like I just did here, you want to, or unlike I just did, I should say, you want your screw facing vertical. So I'll just fix that and then show you what I'm talking about here. Alright, just like so. Now, this little plate, I'm going to hold it with the pliers here so you can see. If you notice, one side of it's cut out, and what we're going to do is slide it under that screw and then tighten the screw down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, now we can just tighten down the screw. Perfect. And then you take your connector, and that goes on like usual. Push it in place. Alright, there we go. So now we can actually just kind of position to show you how this is going to go here. So your connector works like usual, except instead of there being a spring on the back of here that's pulled to this, you now have this other sear-like piece. So completely change the way the Glock system works. Alright, so what we can do now, I'm going to take the magazine catch spring and I'm just going to put that in place right inside of that mag well. Alright, and I'll go ahead and throw in our magazine catch. Alright, that's in place. Nice and easy there. Alright, now our locking block with these strip frames, they come with the locking block. And they're just seated in there, so we just need to pop it up here. Sometimes they are pretty snug in there, like this one is. So let me get a different tool, one that's actually not a Allen wrench. There we go. And just kind of use the leverage to pop it out. Alright. So, things are also get a little bit different here. I'm going to go ahead and actually put that slide lock in there just to get that out the way. And if you notice, your slide lock is cut on one side, or one side it's flat. You need to make sure it goes in the right way, because notice it should latch the shelf of the bottom of this barrel here. So it needs to be facing rearward. And all you need for that is a punch. Alright, that'll snap into place and it'll spring up and down. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of position this trigger mechanism here. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to throw a little bit of oil on that connector. You can use grease, oil, you know, whatever your favorite firearm lubricant is. And we'll just drop this into place. And now on the trigger itself, I'll kind of pop this back out so I can show you. Notice how one side of it is almost like a bushing. Well, that's where your spring is going to sit. So the spring is going to go just like this here. Or there's a hole that runs through there. Let me find it. There it is, just like so. And it's going to sit just like that. So this is now your trigger spring. Alright, we're going to drop that into place. Alright, and now the locking block is going to come down, but we're going to push that spring so that it folds back under that locking block. Alright, and you can see that spring's kind of sticking up right there now. That's how it should look at this point. What we're going to do next is take our slide catch, slide release, whatever you want to call it here. Guide it in as usual. And then we'll drop it onto the floor. That way we have the opportunity to pick it up. Alright, now only do that once. And then we'll reposition it. Alright, and then at this point, take your first pin, or your smaller pin here, and we'll come in through the other side, and then we'll push those springs out the way, push them down so the pin can clear. And I'm just kind of using the table to actually push the pin in. Alright, and then I'll use some kind of tool to push those springs out the way. And I will use something. I'm going to use an actual hammer because I'm going to get that pin a little bit below flush. Alright, perfect. Now you check your slide catch here. And now it's not held into position yet, but there should be some tension on it, so you can kind of feel that tension. And then we can take our actual trigger pin coming in from the right side. We'll push it all the way through. Alright, that will click into place. Alright, and then we'll put the last pin back through the housing back here. Alright, and then your trigger should spring back and forth just like this, and your slide catch should go back down. Alright, so that is the frame. Now we can continue with the slide. I'm going to put my extra parts back in this bag. Alright. I'm just going to use my Fix-It Sticks front sight tool to unscrew the factory front sight. That'll come right off. And then for the rear sight, I'm just going to use a punch and drive it out. Just like so. Alright, now our new sights can go in. Which I say new sights, actually took these off of another gun I wasn't using. Alright. Alright, so we'll center that up, and I was using a brass punch, so you can actually use some cold blue. I'm using Brownells 4440, and the cold blue, I'll show you here. You can see the brass on the sight. Cold blue doesn't really change the color of it, but it'll actually pull the brass off of it completely. Alright. So the cold blue is for steel. It doesn't actually blacken the brass, but there's such a thin layer of it on there that it'll actually just tear it right off. And there you go. Now we'll just take our front sights. That's the old front sight. I don't want to use that. Alright, and then I'll use a little bit of Loctite. So oftentimes I use red for this, but for what we're going to be using it for, blue will do just fine. Put the sight on and put the screw in. Alright, that's nice and straight. I'll take these extra parts and stick them in the bag. Place those in my box. Okay. Now, I'll take our new barrel, because we're going to be using this is the Dead Air, and this is the Mojave, yeah. So this is the Mojave 9, and obviously using a suppressor with a ported barrel makes absolutely no sense. So we're getting rid of the ported barrel for this threaded barrel. And I'm just going to lubricate everything now because we're in the final assembly phase here. All we have left to do is put the optic on after this. And we'll use that same recoil spring. And that's it. Alright, just line it up. Alright, and that's all there is to it. Now we can go ahead and throw our optic on. Alright. And I'm just gonna unscrew the top plate. Alright, and now that the top plate is off, we can take our optic and you're going to want to take the battery that hopefully came with it. It did, great. And the screws. You'll need both of those. We're not going to use that wrench. Okay. And now I'm going to just absolutely go crazy trying to get this thing open. Alright, good enough. Put the battery in. Put the battery in again. Alright, then we're going to take the screws that came with the RMR. The two shorter ones. and put those screws on there nice and snug. They come with thread locker pre-installed. Just don't do anything crazy. That's all there is to it. That's our Glock 17 build. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them down below. If you need help with anything for any reason ever, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.